Hi, my name is Darcy Staniforth, and I'm with Haunted OC. Welcome to Nocturnal Emissions. On this episode, we have the host and producer of the incredible podcast, Paranormal Perception, and the organizer of the Oc Pericon, Henry San Miguel. Henry, welcome to Nocturnal Emissions.
Hi, Darcy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad to sit down and actually get to talk to you face to face.
Yeah, usually over a microphone we can't see each other, but now we can.
Now we can, which is fantastic. So before we get into talking about Oc Pericon, let's talk a little bit about your history with the paranormal. What got you started down this path of the paranormal, ghosts, hauntings, and eventually to where we are now, which is organizing Orange County's premier paranormal convention?
It was Ghost, actually. This is when I was 4 years old. I grew up in San Francisco. The house I learned after it was built. I'm not sure if it survived the '06 earthquake or built after, but it was built in 1906. So it's been there for a while. It's got some history. And I was 4 years old, and it was middle of the night. I don't remember why I woke up, but I just woke up, and I saw people coming out of the closet, which is weird, number one. But something told me in my little 4-year-old mind, they're not alive. They don't look like monsters or, like we see in horror films. But I knew they weren't alive. So I did what most 4-year-olds would do. I turned on the light, put the covers over my head, and didn't come out till the sun came out. When I did come out, they were gone, obviously, but the light was still on, which told me it was real. It wasn't a dream. I didn't imagine it. So from there, I always say most normal people would run for the hill. Oh, my house is haunted. I'm leaving. I don't want to be here anymore. Me, it was the opposite. And I had always... Halloween I always call it my Christmas. You can tell why I'm doing Paranormal Perception and Oc Pericon. But not in the morbid way, but I've always been fascinated. Even before that experience, I was always fascinated with the unknown, the other side. Not so much death, because at that point, at 4 years old, I hadn't experienced death yet. No one in my family had passed away. So, I mean, I heard people pass away, but I'd never personally experienced it. So I knew what it was, but it was, like I said, it wasn't in the morbid, I want to know what death is kind of way. But those people that I saw, I wanted to know, why were they there? How did they get there? Where did they come from? Who are they? And actually, I think I found out, but that's not till later. But that's what sparked it. And show my age here, but back then there were no, there were no television, there were no ghost adventures, none of the TV shows that we have. No, there was no internet. Yeah, that old. There was no internet, but there was this big building that had these things here called books, libraries.
Yes, I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah, and in there they had these ancient tomes called encyclopedias. So when I went through those, I started seeing hauntings, apparition, everything that is part of the paranormal, the supernatural. Now I found out there, and there were some other books besides the encyclopedia. So I found those were my first teachings, if you want to see them that way, about the paranormal, about the other side, and what they were. It wasn't until later, we'll probably get into this in a second, it wasn't until later that I found out that other people were experiencing things, not exactly what I saw, but they were seeing people, hearing things, and there was a whole field, and that leads into a whole other thing. But that's kind of a long answer, but that's how my start, if you will, into the paranormal, into the supernatural.
Yeah, I was also the kid that at the library, I would get any book I could on ghosts or hauntings, and then like with shows like In Search Of, and then Unsolved Mysteries, and then the good old Time Life series, Mysteries of the Unknown, where it would like ship you a book every month,
I still have one, actually.
I still have those as well at home, but again...
See, and I keep saying, because every time I talk to somebody on Paranormal Perception, we get into that topic, and they say the same thing. Yeah, I was the weird kid. And I always think, why didn't we all go to the same school? We would have been together at lunch talking about, because I was the only one that seemed to, because back then in San Francisco, kids were talking about the 49ers because they were winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl. I was the only one talking about comic books, Star Wars, ghosts. So I was the weird. That's why nobody sat with me at lunch.
You were like, I don't want to talk about Joe Montana. I would
Yeah.
like to talk about ghosts. And people were like, we would like to talk about Joe Montana. But I
Yeah.
say the same thing to people. I feel like now we're in this space with conventions, the internet, podcasting, where we can find all of our new best friends, right?
Yeah.
All these people that are like-minded and interested in researching the same things that we want to do. Like, that's probably one of my favorite things about where the technology has advanced to today, because I get to be friends with people in my own area, like you, but then also, you know, reach across not only like the state or the country, but like even to Europe and other spaces where people are also interested in this as well, which is so cool.
Yeah, you're right. I always say that on the show. It's that's part of it, but it's also the fact, like I said, if there's anyone that it just had their first experience, saw something, you thought you heard something, you're thinking that night, am I going crazy? When you start seeing people sharing stories all over the world, not just in your town, but all over the world, then it's a little, okay, I'm not crazy. There's other people that are. So I like that part too, the fact that, it brings all of us together.
When, or can you recall when you met that like first other like-minded person?
Yeah, it was. I don't remember his name, but it was at a radio station. Because I got introduced to radio when I was 10 years old, and I've been doing radio pretty much my entire life. It's never been a normal job, so it's been something in media, mainly in radio. But I remember around October, because everybody does, let's bring a witch or a psychic or whatever for Halloween. And they were, it was a morning show. They were doing morning show stuff with the psychic. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? 49er, because they were winning back then. But I remember off the air afterwards, the psychic came to me, and he said, every time I brought something up, the guys were, being the morning show, but you were the only one that actually had a serious look on your face. Why is that? And I told him about the experience I just shared with you, and then he said, tell me a little bit more, and he said, well, because I sense there's something about your aura, is what I didn't know what that meant, because I'd never seen that in books or anything. That was the first time I heard the word aura and energy and all that. So he said, there's something about your energy, about your aura, that for some reason you attract them. And by them, he meant spirits, ghosts. And so we didn't get to talk too much because he had to leave the station, and I was there. But that was my first, I'm not the only one. There's other people that actually see and hear all these things.
And then you're left with the wacky morning zoo crew who's just like making sound effects, and you've just had this like life altering moment, right?
Yeah.
So for you with Paranormal Perception, what starts the podcast? What makes you want to take your personal stories, the experiences you've had with other people, to a wider audience?
That was, I thought about it long and hard, seriously, because at the time I'd been doing another podcast. It's called the Geek Speak Show. It was about everything that used to be made fun of. Talking about, it was basically San Diego Comic-Con coming out of your, however you listen to the phone, however you listen to podcasts. That's what it was. I interviewed all the guys from Marvel, Star, all the people that I grew up watching, and people now. That's who I talked to on there. So that was easy. But then a co-host that I had on that show, off the air, we used to share, like most people do today, our paranormal experiences, because her and her sister had a lot of them. And then it was actually at San Diego Comic-Con one day. It was like during downtime, and we're talking in the hotel about our scary stories again. And then we stopped and we said, we should do a podcast about this. We should share all this stuff with the audiences. And because on the Geek Speak show, even though it was about geek culture, the Halloween episodes, all 11 years that it ran, the Halloween episode was always the most downloaded. I mean, on average, we had like 7,000 downloads. That one, it wasn't unusual for us to see into the 100,000 downloads.
Oh my gosh! So
I knew people loved the spooky, the scary. So we said, yeah, let's do it. However, at that time, there were maybe not a million, but hundreds of paranormal podcasts, and not only paranormal podcasts, but paranormal podcasts hosted by people who have decades of experience. Celebrities, paranormal TV celebrities, investigators have been doing it for 30, 40 years. And so we're not investigators. We just talk in a microphone. So we said, okay, if we do that, what do we have to add? Other than I saw a ghost or I saw this. So She's the one that came up with the name Paranormal Perception, and we went with that name, but it was prophetic because especially in 2020, the show started shifting a little more with not just with the pandemic, with everything that came with it. And so we cover, like, to me, paranormal. The word paranormal doesn't automatically mean ghosts.
Sure.
Paranormal covers, especially today, everything. It covers UFO or UAPs, I guess is the new word for it. Everything, Bigfoot, crypt, every all of that. So I covered more of that because in the first couple of seasons, Paranormal Perception, I started to get tired of it because it started to be very repetitive. A lot like, and I get this from the listeners, the like Ghost Adventures and all the TV shows that are there. They'll watch them, but it becomes a drinking game.
Sure.
It's like 2 minutes in, and Zach is like, "Dude, someone touched me. Or, did you see that?" So they make a drinking game out of that. So our show was becoming that, where every week was, investigative team this team investigates, this team. So in 2019 actually is when we started, and obviously into 2020 into now, it changed more into literally giving you a new perception of the paranormal. Answers, yeah, sometimes, because I know a lot of people say everybody sees the paranormal different, and not just with paranormal, but just with everything. I mean, we have enough confusion in the world as it is now. I mean, we've got to start knowing some things. Some things have to stay black and white. There's some gray in some things, but some things have to be black and white, or it's just chaos everywhere. Paranormal, same thing. And I've noticed in the paranormal community, and anybody who's a paranormal investigator or in the paranormal community in some way, probably some that will be at Oc Pericon, they know this to be true. They're not a Star Wars reference, but they know that they push para-unity a lot. There's very little unity in the paranormal community. There's some, and I'm glad to say it's the older generations, the ones that were there from the beginning. They do embody what para-unity actually means, but there's a lot of gatekeeping actually, and I don't like that. Especially when it's a new team or a new person that's trying to, who just, like I said, just had their first experience and they want to know more. I think back to 4-year-old me, instead of running I did put the covers over my head, but instead of running away, I ran to the ghosts in a way. I wanted to know more about them. So today, that's what I want to be. I'm not an expert or anything, but I do try to give everybody a new perception of the paranormal with the guests, or sometimes it's just us. And by us, and I forgot to mention this, Oc Pericon is being put on by my spiritual and paranormal consultants on the show, Unearthing the Supernatural. I met them about a year or two, about 2 years, feels like forever in a good way, but I think it was a year ago that we met, and we just clicked from day one. And they're a team of Navajo investigators and exorcists, and a lot of the stuff that they've taught me and shown me off the air, not on the air, they literally have given me a new perception of the paranormal. Everything I thought I knew, or that I thought that everybody else knew, they just blow my. I can't share everything because there's some things that can't be shared yet with the public, but there's a reason why they had to come on and be my spiritual and paranormal consultant. So together with them, we talked. I mean, for example, just this year alone, we did 2 episodes that are so far the most downloaded ones, and that's the first one we did was when we did. It was actually like literally on the spot because it was the guest was a no-show for that day, and so we just came up with something in that, and I told folklore, they're called cuentos, folklore stories about monsters, and everybody knows La Llorona, but there's other more besides that from Latin American culture. They told those kind of stories, the monster stories that they call them, from the Navajo culture.
Oh, neat.
So everybody loved hearing that. And then the second one was 4th of July, when they came on and they talked about the haunted history of America before America was even called America. So they went into that, and everyone loved that one also. So like I said, having them on, I was really lucky finding them, because now it really literally is a new perception of the paranormal.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, right? Because it's funny because you said, like, I'm no expert, but even the people I know in the community who've been doing research and investigation for decades are like, I'm still not an expert because
Yeah.
we're talking about, like, you can't have concrete ideas about something that continues to evolve and is unknown. It's like saying, well, I know all the answers. Do you really? Do we really? Right? And again, being like, I think some of the best investigators and people that are involved in this world are lifelong learners, right? They're wanting to know more, they're wanting to investigate more. And you bringing up this para-unity and bringing in people with different perspectives that are not just perspectives of traditional, like many of the ghost shows that have been happening for a long time or the podcasts have been happening for a long time, but bringing in other cultures, bringing in like what their history and what things mean to them. Where if people get stuck in one type of historical narrative or religious narrative, where they wouldn't be able to have different experiences because they're so hyper focused on that, they can't say, like, oh, but you could be experiencing something in a completely different way if you can kind of let go of that a little bit or open up your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is so awesome. That's so great. I'm so excited to meet them at OC Pericon. And that 4th of July episode is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So how did you come to meet them? Like, how was this, a happenstance? Oh, they came on the show. Was this something that you felt like was much larger than all of you combined? Like, how did they come into your world and how did you come to theirs?
Kind of like radio, completely by accident. We had just shot a test pilot for a TV show that was gonna go to air at the time. So we shot a pilot at Vulture City in Arizona, and about a week or a couple of weeks after, one of the leads from the show that we just shot, he texted me and said, "Oh, hey, by the way, let me tell you about this group of guys that I ran into. He literally ran into them also because it's funny. We all laugh about the story now because you'll see them. I've told you about them when we talk." And everybody that's going to OC Pericon, you'll see I call them gentle giants. One of them is like 6'7" or something. He's like 6'5". I think he's got a couple inches there. His brother, he's also a giant, but they're all really, really humble and nicest people, but giant teddy bears really. But when they investigate, they do it differently for sure than any other team out there. One, because they bring in the Navajo teachings. They're psychically gifted. The hero, especially, very psychically gifted. He speaks to them. You see it on their YouTube channel. He speaks to them in the spiritual language. So he speaks their language. He, without getting into all the details because we can't talk about it, but there's a way but it has to do with the mask that you'll see them wear that allows him with his gifts to cross dimensions, if you will. He's able to cross, literally see them. And they're not all demons. Most people would describe them as demonic or they're not. They're beings, entities that have been here long before us and probably be here long after us. So with them, with the supernatural, again, totally by accident. The lead on that show that we shot the pilot for, he texted me and said, "Let me introduce you to these guys because they really scared the crap out of me," because he was filling up his car because they lived in Arizona at the time, and I see these two giant guys coming at me, and because they wear armor and they've got a sword and the masks, so I guess they had just finished shooting, they were wearing that, and they knew them because these people have been on television before, so they recognized them, and they went, hey, let's go say hi. So they came up to him, and he called his wife saying, "I'm just calling to say I love you, goodbye. I don't know if this is like my final moments." Today, obviously, nothing happened. We laugh at it because that's, typical Jay is his name, but that's just how he would react anyway. But then he told me about him. He sent me a link to their YouTube channel. I watched what they did, and they know this. What I really liked about them when I first saw their YouTube channel, it wasn't their investigations or anything. It was, being a media nerd, it was their style, the way they edited, the way they used music, the way they set the tone with the camera, the way they spoke with the camera. That's the first thing I noticed. And then, oh yeah, by the way, they're wearing masks and all this, and they're talking in spiritual language, and you get ghosts answering back to them. So, I reached out to them, and they didn't come on the show. we went back and reshot because we had to reshoot a few parts of the pilot we did. So I said we have to have them on here. So and it was kind of funny because for this show we needed amateur ghost hunters. Now they know a lot about the typical stuff you see, the REM pods and all the things you see on the shows. But they also using their gifts and how they speak to the entities. They can bring them up like in seconds, because that's one thing about every investigator will say it. Ghosts, spirits, when you go on a ghost hunt, they're not performers. Just because you tell them reveal yourself, they're not gonna come out. Caveat to that is with these guys. I've gone with them. I've shot potential television shows with them. We're just setting up the cameras. We're already seeing things, hearing things. The owls start talking to each other, which isn't a good thing. But all kinds of things are going on before it even happens. And once we get going, I will say, and because I've been there, it's very frightening, terrifying, the things that they can bring up. But that shows you what kind of camera person you are. When you go there, and if you don't drop the camera and run, you're ready. You're ready to do a horror film for sure. Because if you don't run away from the real thing, you're ready to shoot Freddy or whoever if you're gonna do a horror film.
And do you think with them, these things start happening because of how in tune they are? Yeah. It's not just them. It's really any tribe, not just Navajo, but any tribe, indigenous tribes, and even down to like Latin American indigenous tribes. It's because they were so in touch with the land and the spirits of the land before everything was colonized and erased. They were so in touch with it that when the teachings get passed down, like they have in this case from the elders, it's the way you and I are talking and conversating. That's the way they would speak to the spirits back then. To them, it wasn't. If they were alive today, and you told them, "Hey, I heard my grandma." I was like, hey, "Yeah, what did she tell you?" It wouldn't be like, it's in your imagination. They would be like, "Yeah, what did they tell you? Tell me about it. What'd she say?" It was as normal as breathing, as we're conversating now. So that has a lot to do with it. And like I said, not just with them, but with any really indigenous tribe all over the world. Well, and I think, this is something that in a lot of, I would say, like more Western spirituality, like folks don't consider ancestral work or even really give as much heed to the ancestors as more indigenous folks or people from other parts of the world do, where it's very much part of their belief system in honoring that both in life and those who have crossed over. But the idea that they are still able to communicate, still are guides, still influence things here for those of us who are still on Earth.
Yeah, well, they actually answered a question that I've never asked anyone, but they answered a question that I always had, and that most investigators, especially like I said, like Vulture City or Virginia City in Nevada, where I don't know if you've ever been there, but if you go there, I think Ghost Adventures, and a lot of shows have done episodes there. I've been there a few times for Paracons. When you go there, it's literally like stepping on the time machine. It's like you go back into the 1800s, including your Wi-Fi doesn't work. But that's a whole other thing. But when you go to those towns, and they embrace the haunted. Every shop is haunted, and they love to tell you the stories. But they always start with the founder of the town or this gold mine. What they've taught me is that there's a history. As I have a T-shirt, I'll probably wear it at Oc Pericon. One of their things is think beyond written history, because there was something there before the history that we know, before there was a gold mine or mine or anything. So that's what they would, not with Paranormal Perception, but with their channel. That's that's how they approach the paranormal, and that in turn I also, not to their level, but that's what the perception in Paranormal Perception, that's what I try to show people, is that think beyond the written. And written history doesn't just mean indigenous. Written history means something like Waverly Hills. What was there before Waverly Hills? Why are the hauntings? Is it just because the sanatorium was there, or was there something else before that that's still there somehow?
And was there something there that's been silenced, right? Because I think the way that we're raised, especially in the United States, with the history we're taught, is either like top-down history, here are the winners, and then there's everyone else. Or it's like, look at these great figures, as opposed to like a bottom-up history or the history that has been passed down through, you know, the community, the group, the tribe, those different kinds of things that does not show up in like traditional history books. But you have to know people. And like you were saying, like certain things you can't share because it's closed practice, right? And not everyone has a right to that or needs to be involved in that, which I think is fantastic that, one, I love that you're honoring that because not everyone gets to know. But at the same time, the fact that they have also felt so comfortable that they brought you into that too, which is great.
And before we move on, I will say, and I am kind of speaking for them, but it's okay. I can. When we say that, when we say some things we can't tell, it's not because it's top secret. It's because, plain and simple, people aren't ready yet.
Sure.
It's you know, especially today, how people tend to overblow things. So it's very once you learn things, because they've told me a few things that, again, that we can't publicly talk about yet. Yeah, it blew my mind. But then when I think about it, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, duh. But so, you know, that's why they don't share it yet, yet, only because investigators, especially the younger ones, they're not ready yet for that kind of knowledge.
Well, and I mean, like, even you were talking about UFOs, UAPs, whatever side of the coin people are on right now, right? But all these folks calling for like full disclosure, and yet they can't get along with their neighbor, but they're ready to know everything about people coming from other universes or other planets, or beings coming from other universes or other planets. So I'm with you on that, where I'm like, I know you think you're ready. I absolutely know you think you're ready. You're not ready for this yet.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that comes up for me as you're talking about this, and maybe it was with them or maybe something else you've encountered through a guest on the podcast or in your own experiences, but can you share with our viewers something that an experience that shifted your perception, where all of a sudden, like, you came out of that and you're like, ooh, I can't look at the world the same way anymore. Something you can share.
Yeah, it wasn't with Unearthing the Supernatural. It was before I met them. It wasn't even with investigators. It was during my radio career when it was back in San Francisco. I was trying to think, like, where was it? It was back in San Francisco. There was a period where nothing I did could fail. I mean, we were #1 morning show, #1 this, everything was great. We had an idea for a concert or this, everything, it went out perfect. And after a while, there were some people that I never found out who they were until later, but they came around the station. They just showed up, and I guess you could call them the Men in Black, I guess.
Okay.
Would be one way to call them. Other people might have some other names for them, but they were basically another Star Wars term, trying to bring me to the dark side. And something in me told me, actually, not too long ago, I talked to a psychic lawyer of all things, and he explained the gut feeling, why we say the gut feeling. There's an actual astrological, psychological, and supernatural reason for why we say there's a gut reason for that. So this gut feeling told me, I don't know if I want to do that. So, and then as I got older and, I learned more about the supernatural, the paranormal, I see that all the people that did follow along, suddenly they started having bad luck, health issues, sudden deaths in their family. Tragedy just follows them all along. Yeah, they're great at what they do, whatever it is, but there's a price that comes to that. So I like to say, I never say it publicly except for like right now, but when asked, but I say I dodged the bullet with that. So that was one where it wasn't, a demon or anything scary like that, but it was something that I do see it as supernatural, because I had to follow that feeling. It wasn't somebody telling me, it was that feeling that told me, nah, you don't want to go down that road.
And I think the paying attention to feelings is really important, right? Yeah. I had a gentleman walk off a tour a couple weeks ago because he just had a bad feeling, and I was like, I totally respect that. I want you to trust your feeling and do what works for you. Even if I'm not experiencing it in that way, he was. And so I wanted to make sure he was comfortable. And like you were saying, like, you're just like, something is like not right with this. And then I think the more we're in this paranormal world, the more we pay attention to synchronicities and these different things that come together or don't come together, or the chain of events that happens for people. And it's hard to ignore, right? Bad luck, deaths, bad health, things like that. Absolutely. I totally hear you with that. Okay. All right. So I'm looking forward to the ellipses on some of these things that that you've kind of teased a little bit. But let's talk about Oc Pericon. So you moved down here from San Francisco, and what makes you go, you know what we need down here? A paranormal convention.
That was almost word for word what I asked. Because with Paranormal Perception, I had covered other Paracons.
Sure.
None in the LA or Orange County area. Was not even in San Francisco. They were in Northern California, but like in Jackson, close to the border, or Arizona, Nevada. East Coast has a ton of them. Some in Washington, some in Seattle, but none in the San Francisco area, and none here in the LA area. When we came here, we moved here right around the end of 2019. So, new city, new show, let's do something new. Then the world said, no, you don't.
Best laid plans, right? Best laid plans.
There were a lot of films that came out because everybody was just writing. So that we have a lot of films now. But it was during the lockdown during 2020 when it was an idea at the time already. I asked everybody that I know, paranormal TV celebrities, just people that just investigate, not on television, that just investigative groups around here that live their entire life here in LA or in Orange County. And I asked them, have you guys ever been to a Paracon? Yeah, there's Midsummer Screens. No, a Paracon, a paranormal conference. Oh, no, they had to think about it. No, there's never been one. Said, ever? Said, well, there was one, I think they said like in 1997 or something. I said, how about in this millennium? No. Even Patty Negri is a good friend. She said, no. And she goes to everything paranormal. She said, no, there's never been one. And so I said, okay. Well, why not me? Well, 2020 said, why not me? So like I said, 2021 last year was supposed to be the first one. And the hotel, like everything, it wasn't their fault. We didn't really know at the time. It was, yes, you can. No, you can't. Yes, you can. Actually, no, you can't. So like everything, we went virtual. So technically, this one is the second, but it's the first in person. Because that year, I vowed on the air, I even said it, so I can't go back now. I said, no matter what happens, we're doing it in person next year. Well, it's here. We're pretty close now. It's happening. Knock on wood. Where's wood here? Knock on wood. It's happening. But that's why, because I was shocked actually in LA and OC, especially here in Anaheim when it's known for Disneyland, obviously. LA is known for everything. Hollywood, obviously, but there's everything here. We're in the second biggest city in the country, and not having a Paracon, I said, why not? And what I try, and I think mission accomplished, but what I tried to do is to keep it local, the personality wise, and people that represent it, and I didn't want it to be just TV personalities, because again, like the shows and like Paranormal Perception in the beginning, it would get repetitive having ghost investigator after ghost investigator after ghost. So everyone that's up there is going to present something different. Some are going to show you how to investigate. The very first one with Jeff Dwyer, who's been a friend for forever, about 11 years, not forever. I mean it in a good way. But he his book series is the Ghost Hunter's Guide to ... and he did a book on LA, the Southern California area. So that's the first panel. It'll be the Ghost Hunter's Guide to LA, to Orange County, and he talks about locations that even I didn't know about here. And I ask around everybody that, and I don't know, with Haunted OC, you guys have a lot of them, but I ask around, like if we pass an old building, hey, is that haunted? Is a house that looks like this? Is that haunted? Yeah, that's the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland. I said, no, that one over there, the real one. So he knows about a lot of those, and then the follow-up to that will be Peter Obeah, who, and I didn't plan it this way, but I'm glad they are in this order. He'll be talking about data review, how to set yourself up with data reviews. So when you finish that investigation, how do you gather all the footage, all the audio, the pictures, everything? It was a fun investigation. It was exciting because you got something, but now you've got 5 hours of footage to go through. So he'll show you how to go through all that. So every one is going to present something different. We have one about the Queen Mary with Nicole Strickland, which everyone knows about the Queen Mary. She's going to talk about the haunted history of the Queen Mary. And we have one of them that I'm glad she agreed to come on as an author, MG Stevens. She was on the show, and she wrote a book called The Boogeyman Chronicles. It's about her story basically. But her what she's trying to shed a light on is neurodivergent mediumship, which means people that have ADD or PTSD or anything, any mental issue, but they see things, they see ghosts, they hear this, they go to the doctor and they say, it's part of their affliction. She's highlighting that no, it's not. They're actually gifted. So her presentation is about that. It was, again, one that was really popular, and I got a lot of emails. Hey, I'm glad you guys talked about that. So I'm glad she agreed to do that at Oc Pericon, because that'll be a good one. But again, like I said, each one of the presentations gives something different. You guys haunted OC, obvious. Actually, you can tie it in kind of to Jeff Dwyer's first one. These are the haunted locations, and we offered tours there, so you guys can go there too. So, but there's something different. There literally is something for everyone at Oc Pericon.
And I think, one, that is so important, but also, two, I think people have to realize, for those of us who've been going to conventions for most of our lives, because we are nerds, right? We want a variety of things. We want to get into, because there are going to be people who are like, I can't wait to sit in on the data. I can't wait to hear these stories. I can't wait to be hyper focused in on the Queen Mary. But then there's going to be people that go to panels and discover something completely new, which is really exciting. And I think one of the things that has me really excited about it, besides the fact that we get to do a panel there as well, is the fact that, like, knowing your background, knowing radio and events, you are not someone who's just like, well, we'll just have one room and then everyone will be in tables around. Like, you're really trying to make this even though we're starting local, like not starting local, but the first in-person one, right?
Yeah.
Being local, but you really want this to become something that is a destination for people to come to.
I've never said this publicly. I'll give you an exclusive to Haunted OC.
Yes.
And I hope I'm not jinxing it. But my goal with Oc Pericon is to turn it into maybe not the San Diego Comic-Con, maybe the WonderCon of the paranormal. Because San Diego Comic-Con, I don't think even I would want something that size. WonderCon is a little bit more manageable. But,
sure.
But it's an annual event. People know. And I want to keep it on the first weekend in October because, as we all know, October, really September, but October 1st comes around. Even people that don't think spooky, they think spooky then. So perfect way to start it off.
Yeah, and I like the idea of that because, like, as you were kind of mentioning earlier about like Midsummer Scream and these other things that are more horror driven or like spooky driven versus paranormal, right? And bringing in all these spaces of ghosts and cryptids and UAPs and psychics and there's so many things in this world that it only keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which is really exciting. When you think about putting this convention together, right, and bringing in these different folks, it sounds like you're excited about all of them, but is there one person that you're like, you know what, I didn't think we were going to be able to make this happen, but it's happening?
Yes. And I've been asked this question in other shows that I've been on. They ask me that question. They're surprised when I give them the answer. And the answer is none of the guests, none of the speakers. It's the people, the attendees. Because that's why I love covering Paracons from before. Most of the speakers, I know they're friends. I know them, including the ones at Oc Pericon, obviously. But a lot of them are literally probably my neighbors because I live here in Anaheim. And now that it's getting more attention, they're saying, oh, wait. Yeah, I want to go. I don't have to go to Nevada or across the country to see Patty or whatever.
Right.
So it's them. Not only meeting them, but hearing their experiences, their stories. Like you asked me, like we started this. How did you get into the paranormal? What kicked it off for you? I want to hear that, and they're eager to share that because a lot of times they need a show or a something, or just someone, just an ear to share, so that again they know I'm not crazy. Did I actually see my grandma? Did I hear this? Did I see that? And there's people there. We're all there for the same thing. Yeah, you did. Like, tell me more about it. I want to hear more.
Speaking of that, there's something very cool happening at OC Paragon, thinking about people sharing their stories.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about kind of the special space in which people can share their stories at the Paracon?
Yeah, behind the main stage, or in front of, I forget how we're setting it up, but there's going to be a special room where we're going to have Unearthing the Supernatural and Paranormal Perception. We'll have our own tables there, and not because we're special, but because we're going to be shooting video like we're doing now with you guys, a lot of the guests, but also a lot of the attendees. And on the Paranormal Perception table, I'm going to have a setup on the side where it's a microphone, because we did this last year. I did it for the Halloween episode. Because on a paranormal podcast, what don't you do for Halloween? So it was like, hey, let's just tell ghost stories, and people loved it because again, like you said earlier, me being a radio guy, a sound guy, it sounded like we were in the middle of a thunderstorm and the campfire, and we're telling stories, and everyone sent in their stories. We got stories from the UK, all over the place, but then for Christmas, I was thinking, look, how do we do spooky? How do we do Christmas on a paranormal show? So I remembered back in the 1800s, Christmas was basically Halloween. Charles Dickens' story, that's where it comes from that time period. So I asked the listeners, hey, would you guys want to send in stories? Yes. The answer was yes, they would. So a couple of people even sent in a couple songs, spooky songs. So we played those back. So obviously it was a big hit. So we're going to do the same thing. I think it's become an annual thing, doing it like that. But I figured since they're all going to be there and they want to share their stories, they don't have to. If they want to, they can sit in front of the microphone, share the stories, and they'll hear it played back on either the Halloween or the Christmas episode.
I think that's such a neat idea because, again, like you were saying, so many times I feel like when we in this world open a door, people are more than happy to walk through. Like I had a moment just a couple weeks ago where I was like being driven somewhere with a group, and we were talking about cryptids and things, and all of a sudden the bus driver says, I don't tell many people this. And we just all settled in because I knew, like, I was like, oh, we're about to get a really good story, right? And that's like such an honor when people feel comfortable enough to say, I want to share this experience with you, because they know that you're going to listen with an open mind, an open ear, and even kind of an open heart to say, like, I'm here for you to listen to this experience without judgment, but just to hear me out, which is so important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say there were some guests that wanted to be at OC Pericon, but again, knowing them, they're the gatekeepers, like I said. So they're the kind that are very closed. They'll tell you they know a lot about the paranormal, but they're not open to hearing other people's other than their own experiences. So for that reason alone, I said thanks, but no thanks. We're okay for this year, maybe next year. But that's the real reason why I didn't want them there, because I want, and I keep saying this in all the interviews also, I want everyone the attendees that go there to know that that's a safe space for them. No one's gonna laugh at you. There's no silly questions there. Every single guest that's gonna be there, yeah, they have experiences, they know things, they've studied in these fields, but they're also open to hearing their stories, because that's how they learn. That's how they get more experience, from hearing experiences from other people. What they may have seen, a shadow person or whatever, but how did this person see a shadow person? They all are hungry for knowledge also.
Yeah, and it's really important, right? Because we learn from one another. And the gatekeeping is something that drives me so crazy, because I too am a nerd growing up. Any Star Wars reference you want to drop anytime, totally fine with. But, the very, like, we were as nerds, like, kept out of things. Like, oh, well, we don't want to talk about that. Or like, you and your weird stuff. I don't ever want to do that to other people. I want people to feel welcome. I want people to have new experiences. And it sounds like the way that you are really organizing the convention is for that para-unity.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've seen it at other, not that we organize, but other conventions that we covered as Paranormal Perception. I've heard it, I've seen it, and I've saw it in their faces, the attendees, where they go up so excited because I see you on television, I'm ready to tell you my story, and you can see in the celebrities' attitude, it's just okay. And the attendee's face just drops, and it's like, oh.
Right.
And I don't say anything, but in my head I'm thinking like I got to do something where kind of like Walt Disney, why he built Disneyland, same thing. I need not a park, I need a convention where that kind of thing won't happen, and here it is, Oc Pericon.
Well, because those folks have like that is their moment with that person,
Yeah.
and they have maybe it's not that they admire them from their work, but maybe that person's work has helped them get through something tough, and so it's like, oh, here's the moment, and when that like, oh, wow, they don't feel excited that that person's excited to be there. It's always a letdown. Always a letdown. I'm so excited about this. So we've teased a few speakers. Can you tease some of the vendors that are going to be at Oc Pericon?
Yeah, not too many. I mean, a lot of them are the speakers themselves. Okay. A lot of them have films, books, and so they're gonna have their tables. We have a couple actually that are they're psychics, but they have two different styles. So they'll be offering readings there. One is just straight, psychic reading. The other, she speaks through spirit, is the way she says it. And I don't know how her neighboring vendors are going to take it, but she wants to play music to set the mood and all this. And I said, okay, but just not too loud because the people are trying to, talk about their stuff too. But it should be interesting to see that. Some of the speakers, they'll be offering tarot readings. Some will be doing, I think numerology, one said. Patty Negri, she's going to be offering readings, and everybody's going to want a reading from Patty Negri. But like again, we're starting small, so because of that, the exhibitor room is not huge. So we don't have a lot of vendors for this year.
Speaking of Patty, you want to talk a little bit about the special thing that's happening Saturday night?
Yeah, I've done a few at other Paracons we've covered with her. In fact, in 2020. The last one we did, I filmed it. The last one we did was in Virginia City with her, and not just because she's a friend, yeah, a little biased, but all of her seances are literally magical and very emotional. Also, they're funny because again, Patty comes from the performance side, so she, not that it's fake, but she knows how to put on a performance along with her gifts, and she's very, very, very gifted. So it's a show. It's like you're watching a movie, but just watching her, how she brings in people, the groundings that she does before we start, you feel safe. Number one, if anybody's ever been around Patty, you feel positivity just coming out of her when she walks in the room. And like I said, they're very emotional. And I always tell people, even if you're gonna sit in the back, I'll just watch. Don't be surprised if grandma or a friend or somebody comes through and delivering a message to you. We've had with old friend of mine who used to do a lot of the Paracons. Doug Carnahan is no longer with us, but he had closure with his dad that he never had in life through Patty, through one of his her seances, and the entire room was crying. Even if they didn't know Doug, just seeing Doug and us who did know Doug. I didn't know that. Doug was like a second dad to me. I didn't even know that story about him and his dad, and he came through Patty. It was basically the girlfriend, I guess, or new wife that his dad had at the end of his life, blocked all the prevented all the kids, him and his brothers and sisters, from seeing Dad at the end.
Wow.
And he just wanted to tell his dad, it wasn't my fault that I couldn't say goodbye. And his dad came through Patty and said, I know it's okay. I know why you didn't go, and it's okay. So see, I'm starting to get teary right now, but nobody could, everybody was crying, even they didn't know Doug. So things like that are what happens during a Patty Negri seance.
And is the seance on Saturday night limited to a number of people? Like, how many people will be in attendance?
Not number of people, but it is a separate ticketed event.
Okay.
Unless you got, those of you that got the VIP ticket, which are sold out at this point, that's included in the VIP ticket. So it's a separate ticket event. We're not limiting because I think we're gonna move it's gonna be in the main stage area.
Okay.
But the hotel staff, so they'll probably just move the chairs, so we have more room for people to. I don't know what the staff said that. Well, don't worry, we'll handle it.
They'll handle it.
They've been really, really good, really excited because again, everyone has a paranormal experience. They've been telling me that there's some stories about the hotel. Something happened in this room, in that room. So yeah, there's a lot of excitement, but yeah, it's a separate ticketed event, which depending on when people are watching, the 2-for-1 ticket sale it's still going on, so you can get your ticket and bring a friend for free.
Bring maybe the skeptical friend
Yeah.
who wasn't sure. So if folks want to take advantage of the 2-for-1 ticket offer or just buy tickets in general, where can they find those at?
That's easy. Easiest place is OC Paracon. I mean, you have it on the Eventbrite and everything else, but OC Paracon is where everything is. You find speakers, everything on there.
Fantastic. Henry, thank you so much for sitting down and taking time with me today to talk about your history a little bit and the podcast and some of your experiences, but also I'm so excited for October 1st and 2nd, not just because I'm going to be there on a panel, but just to meet people and just to have all of our best friends in one room. So thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.